When James Webb Telescope's mid-infrared scans, an anomaly so subtle that most algorithms dismissed it as noise, a temperature pocket, a localized flare, a smear of reflected sunlight from the fractured shell of 3I Atlas as it drifted past its new solar orbit. But then the anomaly moved, not in a drifting, cooling, natural way, but in a manner that suggested intention, a pulse, a contraction followed by a measured expansion, like a heartbeat echoing where no heartbeat should ever be. At first, Webb's team believed it was a sensor ghost. Instruments misbehave when pushed to their limits, and Atlas had already challenged every wavelength the telescope could observe. But this signature didn't dissolve like glitches normally do. It strengthened, it sharpened. And with every new frame, the structure inside Atlas revealed a new layer. Fractals rearranging, patterns shifting, filaments curling inward like the folds of a sleeping organism disturbed by light. If you're new here, and if you enjoy this kind of deep late-night journey into the mysteries science can't quite explain, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see where this goes, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and what time you started this video, because what I'm about to show you happened across all time zones. When the internal feed reached Dr. Michio Kaku, he reportedly stopped mid-sentence. The usual calm, almost playful tone he used when discussing cosmic mysteries vanished. The room behind him went silent as he replayed the thermal sequence again and again, slowing each frame until the movement inside Atlas became undeniable. Not the twitch of gases, not the refraction of dust. Something coiled, something reacting, something alive. And the more he watched, the more horrified he became. Not because the thing inside Atlas was alive, but because it appeared to recognize the telescope watching it. Webb captured the moment with unsettling clarity. The internal filaments paused, compressed into a single dense node, then flared outward in a perfect spiral, one that matched the frequency of Webb's active scan. It was responding directly to the telescope's signal, mirroring it, studying it, as though it was examining the instrument examining it. That was the moment NASA locked the data behind encrypted channels. That was the moment every unofficial feed went dark. But the truth has a way of leaking. A single frame made it to a private astronomy server, posted anonymously and removed minutes later. It showed a shape, small, coiled, luminous, nested inside Atlas's fractured inner cavity. The shape did not resemble an embryo or a larva or anything earthly. It resembled a structure made of living light, like a crystalline organism adapting to vacuum, wrapping itself around a lattice that didn't belong to carbon or water. And then the frame showed something worse, a thin filament extending outward, pressing against the inner shell of Atlas, mapping it, pressing again, as though testing the container it had been sleeping in for who knows how many millions of years. Kaku described it in the only way he could. Not biology, not technology, something between. Meanwhile, across the next sequence of Webb exposures, the organism, if it even qualified as an organism, rotated its body in a slow, deliberate arc. Light rippled across its surface in soft waves, revealing a translucent core pulsing with a rhythm unsettlingly familiar. Not random, not chaotic. A steady, repeating pattern, a heartbeat. But the timing was wrong for biology. Too deliberate for chemistry, too structured for chance. The pulse matched the repeating binary sequence Atlas had been emitting for weeks. Binary, heartbeat, organism, light. 4 things that should never belong together, unless they originally came from a place where life evolved under laws we've never imagined. As Atlas continued to warm under the sun's radiation, the organism's pulses synchronized with those temperature changes, almost as if it was absorbing energy, not through digestion, but through resonance. Like a creature born to live inside the vacuum between stars, drawing power from starlight the way ancient microbes once drew energy from volcanic vents. But what horrified Kaku wasn't its biology, it was its behavior. Because the organism didn't just pulse with the sun, it pulsed back at Earth. Webb saw the first outward-directed resonance clearly, a narrow, perfectly modulated beam of structured light, fired not at random, but toward a specific point along Earth's orbit. For a moment, Kaku believed it was a signal, a message, a transmission. Then he realized the direction. It wasn't aimed at the planet. It was aimed at the James Webb Telescope itself, The organism had found the eyes watching it and was responding. Not aggressively, not violently, curiously, intelligently, deliberately, as though waking inside a shell, drifting through a foreign star system and discovering, for the first time, another intelligence staring back. And that raised the question haunting every astronomer who has seen the full Webb dataset. Did Atlas bring this thing into our solar system? Or did something put it inside Atlas and send it here on purpose? The organism pulsed again, stronger this time. The inner walls of Atlas shifted. The cavity around it widened, as if making room for the sleeper inside to stretch, awaken, unfold. Webb caught this moment in unbearable detail, and for the first time, the organism did something that froze Kaku completely. It turned, toward the camera, toward Webb, toward us. Not randomly, not by chance. It oriented itself to face the observer. Something inside 3i Atlas had awakened. Something alive, something luminous, something aware, and it now knew we were watching. The moment it faced the camera, the temperature inside Atlas rose by nearly 3 degrees, small on any other scale, but enormous for an interstellar object colder than deep space itself. Webb's sensors registered the heat not as a flare, but as a controlled expansion across the organism's crystalline layers. It was warming itself deliberately, almost like an animal stimulating its circulatory system after waking from long hibernation. But this wasn't blood warming. This wasn't tissue expanding. This was structure activating. Thin channels opened along its surface, narrow branching pathways that glowed with a faint bluish-white luminescence. They resembled nerves, or veins, or circuitry, but none of those words really apply. The channels shifted in shape as they brightened, rearranging themselves into patterns that matched the geometry of Atlas's internal walls. Webb's imaging team realized the organism wasn't just waking up. It was mapping the shell it had been carried in, reading it like a living blueprint. A few frames later, it pulsed again. But this time, the pulse wasn't directed at Webb. It was directed at the structure of Atlas itself. The fractured layers that astronomers once assumed were rock or ice responded instantly. They folded inward, reconfiguring like petals tightening around a seed. The cracks smoothed, broken slabs rejoined. The entire cavity behaved like a chamber built for a creature that had always been expected to move, wake, and grow inside it. Atlas wasn't a comet. It wasn't an asteroid. It was a cradle, a container, a vessel designed for the thing inside. The more the cavity rearranged, the more the organism expanded. Long filaments unwound from its core, each one moving with an astonishing grace, as if they anticipated every shift before it happened. No flailing, no randomness, just the motion of something completely adapted to its environment, like a jellyfish curling into deep ocean currents. But then something changed. The organism paused mid-expansion. Its filaments stiffened, forming a rigid lattice. Its core brightened sharply. Its pulses slowed, then synchronized into an exact sequence Webb had seen only once before. The same binary frequency Atlas had been transmitting since entering the solar system. The realization hit the observatory like a shockwave. The organism wasn't responding to Atlas. Atlas had been responding to it. The object humanity thought of as an interstellar visitor wasn't the traveler, it was the carrier. The organism was the traveler, and it was awakening on schedule. Meanwhile, halfway around the world, Michio Kaku sat in a soundproofed analysis room, listening to every scientist who reviewed the thermal sequences reach the same dreadful conclusion. One described the organism's behavior as embryonic, another described it as computational, a third called it hive-like, as though the thing was coordinating with unseen counterparts. Kaku disagreed with all of them. "It's not a baby," he whispered. "It's not a machine. It's not a colony. It's a scout." He said the word with the kind of quiet dread only a physicist who has spent decades thinking about cosmic probabilities could summon. Because scouts don't travel alone. Scouts are not fragile. Scouts are not helpless. Scouts are the first step, sent ahead to assess, identify, and prepare. But prepare for what? The organism pulsed again, stronger than before. For a brief second, Atlas's outer shell emitted a soft halo of white light, far brighter than any reflective surface should produce under solar illumination. Webb's filters strained to adjust. The halo wasn't solar reflection. It wasn't heat bloom. It was a reaction. A reaction to something the organism emitted. A signal, an activation, a command. The cavity widened further, and the organism unfurled one of its longest filaments, thin, translucent, shimmering with crystalline nodes. It extended toward the opening of Atlas, reaching like a creature testing the boundaries of a cage it had already learned how to unlock. Michio Kaku exhaled slowly as he watched the filament drift outward. "That's not exploration," he said. "That's orientation. It's learning where it is. It's searching for the environment it evolved in." He leaned closer to the monitor. "And it's realizing this isn't it." The organism's pulses shifted frequency. Its core dimmed, then brightened again. The filament extended farther toward the boundary of Atlas, closer to open space, closer to the vacuum, closer to freedom. Webb zoomed in. Kaku froze. Every analyst in the room fell silent. There, at the tip of the filament, forming like frost in fast forward, was a pattern. Delicate, symmetrical, unmistakably intentional. A symbol. A repeating geometric glyph. Not random, not biological, not accidental. A marking, a signature, a message. One that the organism printed in the hard vacuum of space outside Atlas, as if announcing itself to something watching from far beyond our star. Something it expected to answer. Something it believed was already coming. The symbol at the end of the filament didn't remain static. As Webb captured each successive frame, the glyph unfolded in layers. First a simple triangle, then a rotating spiral nested inside it, and finally a branching pattern radiating outward like the veins of a leaf or the tendrils of a neural map. The glyph wasn't just repeating, it was evolving, clarifying itself, sharpening into a form that seemed designed to be universally interpretable. Even without knowing its origin, the meaning felt undeniable. It wasn't a warning, it wasn't a greeting, it wasn't a claim, it was identity. The organism wasn't hiding, it wanted to be known. And the feeling that rippled through every researcher who saw that symbol was the same. This thing had not arrived in our solar system by accident. It had been sent here. As the filament printed the last layer of the glyph, the symbol detached, breaking free in a soft burst of crystalline dust. But instead of dispersing, the tiny particles held formation, drifting as a unified shape into open space. They glowed faintly, shimmering with their own internal luminescence, as if the symbol itself were alive, or at least powered by whatever energy pulsed inside the organism. Webb tracked the glyph. The glyph rotated. Then, impossibly, it maintained orientation relative to a single point somewhere far beyond the sun. It wasn't facing Earth. It wasn't facing Webb. It was facing deep space, as if waiting for an answer. Kaku pressed the heel of his hand to his forehead. "This isn't a signal to us," he murmured. "It's a confirmation, a beacon. It's saying, I've arrived." Before anyone in the observatory could respond, the organism shifted again. Its core pulsation doubled in frequency. The filaments retracted, folding back with the precision of a collapsing solar array. The inner cavity of Atlas sealed itself almost protectively, but not to imprison the organism, rather to shield it, to brace it. The organism's body brightened, then dimmed, then brightened again, each fluctuation stronger than the last. It was preparing. No one knew for what. Then the thermal sensors lit up in a cascading flare. Not explosive, not chaotic, controlled. A wave of infrared energy radiated outward from the organism, passing through the walls of Atlas as though they were transparent. The heat signature wasn't uniform, it carried structure, variations, patterns, and those patterns were unmistakable. They matched the glyph. Webb caught the resonance travelling across the vacuum like a ripple of warmth, a coded wave wrapping itself around the symbol drifting alongside Atlas, as though the organism were infusing the glyph with instructions. More than that, with meaning, heat and light imprinting purpose onto dust. Kaku whispered, "It's activating the message." But the next frames broke even his composure. The organism elongated, just slightly, just enough to reveal that it wasn't a sphere at all. It only appeared spherical when dormant, like a seed wrapped in protective layers. Now, as it awakened further, the outer shell separated into curved segments, peeling open to expose an inner structure glowing with a soft violet light. The shape unfolding inside was delicate, beautiful, and horrifying. It looked like a cluster of interlocking crystalline wings, thin as glass, sharp as symmetry, unfolding with the slow grace of something remembering a movement it had not performed in ages, a living instrument, a biological antenna, a receiver, and perhaps a transmitter. More segments unfolded, not randomly, not experimentally, with purpose. The organism expanded until its inner core was fully exposed, revealing a central lattice that pulsed with the kind of precision found in atomic clocks or pulsars. And for the first time, the creature exhaled, not air, but a soft cloud of microcrystalline, particles that drifted outward from its core. The particles hovered, refusing to drift aimlessly. They aligned themselves into long, thin strands around the organism, like a halo of shimmering fibre. "That's communication," Kaku said under his breath. "A broadcast structure." But the organism wasn't broadcasting to Earth. It was broadcasting outward, from our star system. Then came the signal, not in light, not in heat, not in radio, something deeper, something older, a compression of space so slight it bordered on the imaginary. Yet Webb's sensors felt it. A subtle tremor that didn't come from the cavity or atlas or the organism. It came from the vacuum itself. The symbol floating outside the shell flickered. The crystalline dust rearranged, and a new glyph formed beside it. Not from the organism, from somewhere else. A response. The first reply arrived faster than any speed we understand. Faster than physics should allow. Faster than light could have travelled from any star nearby. A message had been sent, and a message had been received. Kaku stared at the new symbol forming in space, shock erasing the last trace of skepticism. "No, that's impossible," he whispered. It answered. Something out there actually answered. But the organism's reaction was worse. It froze. Every filament stiffened, every pulse stopped, every channel inside its crystalline body snapped into rigid alignment. Not in fear, in obedience. As if the message it had received contained a directive, a command, a signal that had crossed the gulf between stars with a single purpose: awaken. The command, whatever it contained, moved through the organism like electricity through a nervous system it had been waiting lifetimes to activate. Its once soft pulses became rigid waves, snapping through its lattice in perfectly timed intervals. The crystalline halo around it retracted at incredible speed, tightening into a thin corona of geometric shards. Atlas's inner walls responded instantly, contracting around the organism in a synchronized rhythm, like a mechanical lung inhaling for the first time in ages. This was not random awakening. This was protocol. A sequence triggered not by sunlight or motion or human observation, but by the reply. The reply that should not have been able to arrive so quickly. The reply that statistically could not have come from any known civilization. Whatever had answered wasn't close. It wasn't nearby. It wasn't even local to our region of the galaxy. The signal had defied distance. As the organism's structure stiffened into its activated form, a new set of filaments emerged from beneath its crystalline plates, finer, faster, and sharper than the previous ones. They extended outward in spirals, mapping the cavity around it with frantic precision. Atlas itself trembled, as though its ancient frame recognized the steps of the ritual. Even the fractured outer shell tightened until it resembled something far more intentional, far more engineered than anything a comet's surface could ever produce. Inside the observatory, alarms flickered across multiple screens. Webb was detecting something new, something even more unnerving than the activation waves. The space immediately surrounding Atlas began deforming, not bending like gravitational lensing, not heating like plasma, deforming. A subtle curvature, like space was being tilted, nudged, pressured by something unseen. "What's causing that?" someone asked. But Kaku's voice was already low and tight, as if he'd reached the end of a thought he never wanted to complete. "It's aligning, preparing for something. It's anticipating." Webb zoomed tighter on the organism's core. At the center of its body, the violet light that had once flickered softly now deepened into a dense, swirling glow. like watching a miniature storm churn inside a crystalline sphere. Cracks of light raced along its inner plates, illuminating pathways that looked for all the world like nerves firing in a synchronized cascade. It wasn't alive in any biological sense. It wasn't artificial in any mechanical sense. It was something older, something that used the principles of life and technology, but belonged to neither. Something that was born from a physics more ancient than carbon. And then the organism turned again. Not idly, not curiously. It turned toward Earth. The symbol floating in space beside Atlas drifted slightly, rotating until it aligned perfectly with our planet's direction. The response glyph, still shimmering with its impossible origin, shifted to match, as if orienting themselves toward the same target. For the first time, a pattern emerged, a triangle of alignment between the organism, the glyph, and the point in space Webb occupied. A triangulation, not for communication, for calibration. The filament closest to the edge of Atlas extended outward, stretching toward empty space. It curled, tested, and extended further, searching across the void like a blind fingertip brushing against something only it could sense. Its nodes glowed brighter with each passing second, filtering through frequencies the telescope couldn't decode fast enough. Kaku leaned closer, breath shallow. "It's scanning us," he whispered. "It's checking the environment, checking for variables, checking if conditions are correct." But correct for what? Webb recorded the next frames with perfect, unforgiving clarity. A second reply arrived. Not a symbol this time, not a glyph, not anything made of particles or dust. This reply came as a distortion, a ripple of space barely perceptible, like a gravitational sigh. It crossed the vacuum faster than any wave should travel, faster than any signal humanity has ever produced. It hit Atlas with a soft shimmer, like light passing through crystal. The organism reacted instantly. Its core flared bright white, its filaments snapped into perfect symmetry, its entire structure straightened as though being pulled to attention by something colossal. And for the first time, something happened that none of Webb's engineers could believe. The organism's pulse synchronized with the distortion itself. Whatever had sent the reply was binding itself to the organism's rhythm, like two hearts beating in the same ancient cadence. The creature emitted a new signal, deeper, slower, lower, one that made every instrument on Webb tremble as though the telescope were being shaken by a tone too low to hear. The Atlas shell cracked, not with violence, but with inevitability. Light bled from the fissures. Dust drifted like ash. Segments shifted. It was opening. Film-like layers of crystalline armor peeled away in rotating rings. They unfolded so smoothly that they seemed weightless, each layer separating and locking into place with soft, luminous clicks. Every fold revealed more of the organism, more filaments, more plates, more light, more complexity than the previous layer. "This isn't growth," Kaku murmured, his expression pale and distant. "It's construction." Atlas wasn't giving birth. The organism wasn't maturing. They were building something together. The filaments retracted once more, tense, coiled, and then burst outward in a coordinated wave of structured light. Webb caught the exact moment it happened. A shape formed, a ring, a perfect circular structure of energy surrounding the creature like the halo of an eclipse. And then something far more terrifying emerged from the data. The halo wasn't for defense. It wasn't for display. It was for anchoring. The organism was bracing itself, waiting for the arrival of whatever had answered. Something intelligent, something immense, something fast enough to bend distance like warm metal, something coming. And it wasn't coming slowly. It was coming now. The arrival announced itself before any sensor could name it. A faint dimming of starlight rippled across a narrow slice of sky. Too small to be an eclipse, too sharp to be dust, too sudden to be a natural fluctuation. Webb caught the distortion first, a thin, vertical line etched into the vacuum, not dark, not bright, simply absent, a place where light refused to exist. The line widened, not like an object drawing near, but like a door cracking open, revealing a deeper black behind space, something older than any star. Kaku's voice broke to a whisper. "Oh no, that's not distance, that's an event boundary." The air in mission control thickened with the kind of silence that happens only when every human present realizes they are seeing something that should not exist within the universe's allowable behavior. The boundary widened, peeling apart like two sheets of fabric letting something through. No heat, no radiation, only a slow, geometric expansion as a new shape began to emerge from that impossible slit. The organism inside Atlas reacted instantly. Its halo tightened, its core locked into perfect symmetry, its filaments flattened against its body like feathers pressed down by instinctive fear or reverent submission. The reply signal had not come from some distant civilization waiting for contact. It had come from what was arriving now. The door widened another fraction, and a ripple of distortion spread across the surrounding space. Not a shockwave, just a shift, a soft rewriting of the rules in a radius around the opening. Stars behind the boundary warped, light from distant nebulae bent into spirals. Even the cosmic microwave background showed a faint ripple, as though the arrival were pressing against the fabric of the entire observable universe. Then something crossed through. Not a ship, not a beam, not a creature in any biological sense. A silhouette, enormous beyond reason, emerged like a continent rising from an ocean of darkness. It wasn't any single shape. It shifted between them, fractalizing into layers of self-similar geometry. Rings expanded, collapsed, reformed. Spines of light extended and retracted. Sheets of shimmering crystalline structure unfurled like banners waving in a silent vacuum. The organism inside Atlas pulsed once, a single, sharp note of recognition. The silhouette responded. Its inner lights brightened in a slow wave, revealing patterns etched across its surface. Patterns that matched the glyph the organism had printed moments earlier. The same architecture, the same lineage, the same origin. Kaku felt his knees weaken. "That's not its creator," he whispered. "It's its superior." The enormous structure rotated slightly, and with that motion alone, Atlas itself began to move. Dragged as if tethered by an invisible string. Not violently, not aggressively, more like a parent pulling a cradle toward them. The organism braced itself, halo flaring bright white, filaments stiffening into rigid formation. The boundary widened again to accommodate more of the colossal form. Portions of its body shimmered with layered luminosity, as if it were made of countless interlocking dimensions projecting themselves into our own. The creature, if the word even applies, was so vast that only fragments were visible, like seeing the edge of a moon through the trees. But every visible shard of its form radiated intelligence, structure, intention. Webb's telemetry spiraled with data artifacts the team had never even defined. Quantum noise spiked. Gravitational curvature fluctuated in impossible rhythms. The distortion extended beyond Atlas, beyond the organism, reaching toward Earth in a delicate measuring sweep, almost like a hand extended across the void, not to touch, but to examine. The organism inside Atlas reacted with sudden urgency. Its halo expanded. Its core pulsed rapidly. Its filaments carved a new glyph into the space around it. Faster, sharper, more frantic. A warning, a plea, or a request. The colossal being responded immediately. Its layers folded inward, then outward, creating a localized warp that wrapped around both Atlas and the organism. Webb lost visual lock for several frames as space contorted into spirals of refracted starlight. When the image returned, Atlas had moved, shifted tens of thousands of kilometers in an instant. Kaku's breath caught. "It's repositioning the object, away from us." The organism vibrated, its pulses stabilizing into a calmer frequency. It wasn't afraid. It was communicating. But with what? The colossal presence, the slit behind it, or something waiting on the far side of the slit. The answer came from the distortion itself. Another signal, not a ripple, not a glyph, a sound. A deep, resonant vibration that Webb could only register as motion. Space humming like a plucked string across a wavelength older than the universe's expansion. The note passed through the organism, through Atlas, through the vacuum surrounding them, and finally reached Webb's sensors. The organism's entire structure collapsed, not in destruction, but in submission. It compressed into a tight sphere of blinding white light, its armor plates folding inward until it resembled a single perfect crystal. The halo disappeared. The filaments vanished. The cavity around it sealed shut again in an instant. It had gone dormant, or more accurately, it had obeyed. The colossal being extended a single arm of fractalized geometry toward Atlas, a gesture so slow and so gentle that the void seemed to lean around it. Atlas drifted closer, drawn into the creature's embrace like a forgotten artifact reclaimed by its rightful owner. Kaku pressed a trembling hand to his mouth. "This wasn't a scout," he said, voice barely audible. "It was a probe, a carrier." He swallowed, and now the one who sent it has come to retrieve it. But the retrieval wasn't what horrified him. It was what came next, because the colossal being didn't retreat. It didn't turn away. It didn't close the slit. It expanded, slowly, deliberately. And for the first time since Atlas entered our solar system, it faced Earth. The colossal being rotated with an elegance that defied its impossible scale. It didn't pivot like a spacecraft. It didn't turn like a creature. Its entire structure shifted as though space itself flowed around it, rearranging the orientation of reality to let it face the planet. Webb's sensors caught only fragments of the motion, shimmers, bends, fractures of reflected starlight, because the thing's body refused to fit neatly inside the physics our instruments were built to interpret. When the rotation stabilized, the being's entire underside ignited with a slow, layered glow, like the opening of an ancient eye sculpted in fractal geometry. The light grew in delicate pulses, never bright enough to blind, but deep enough to rattle every line of data streaming across Webb's instruments. Even the telescope's gyroscopes hummed in response, as though some invisible tide had reached across millions of kilometers to brush against its frame. It wasn't attacking, it wasn't communicating, it was looking, not at Atlas, not at the organism it had reclaimed, at Earth. Michio Kaku stared at the live feed, his hands clasped tightly, knuckles white. He spoke slowly, as if trying not to disturb something watching from the void. "It sees us," he whispered. "It sees the planet." Around him, no one moved. Even breathing felt intrusive, as though humanity itself had become prey on the forest floor, frozen under the gaze of something older than ecosystems, older than stars. The being didn't emit a beam. It didn't surge with power. Instead, the glow beneath its body tightened, collapsing inward until it formed a single, narrow point, like the focusing of an ancient lens. The point aimed directly at Earth. Kaku leaned closer to the screen, eyes narrowing. "It's not a weapon," he murmured. "It's a scanner." He was right. The beam that followed wasn't light. It wasn't radiation. It wasn't energy in any known form. It was absence. A thin line of pure void extended from the being toward Earth, a filament of space where all electromagnetic signals fell silent. For a few horrifying seconds, every radio telescope on the planet registered a dip in the universal background, an eerie hush, as if part of the cosmos had stopped vibrating. The filament didn't travel all the way to Earth. It didn't need to. Space parted around it, peeling open in faint spirals that revealed flashes of something buried in the black. Shapes, movements, echoes of geometries too fast and too distant to resolve. Webb focused harder, sharpening the edges. Then it saw them. Reflections. Tiny reflections flickering within the filament's core, like mirrors angled toward Earth from some unreachable origin, each one flashing a microscopic fragment of our planet back toward the colossal being. It wasn't scanning Earth in the way humans scan planets. It was showing Earth to something else, something behind the filament, something staring back from the void, something answering the question, is this the place? Is this the world? Is this the one? The organism inside Atlas trembled within its sealed cavity, reacting to the process like a dormant seed responding to the warmth of sunlight. Its pulses flickered through the cracks of its crystalline shell, faint but unmistakable, echoing the filament's rhythm, synchronizing like a child recognizing a parent's heartbeat. The colossal being brightened, not with emotion, not with excitement, with recognition. Earth had been found, and then the filament collapsed back into the being's underside, folding inward like a retracting compass needle. For a moment the being held perfectly still, its vast geometry frozen in quiet contemplation. before it extended a new structure outward. A ring, a translucent disk of shimmering plates, delicate, almost fragile, rotating, in slow, concentric spirals. Every plate reflected a different wavelength. Every spiral moved at its own rhythm. Every rotation felt like the ticking of some ancient cosmic clock winding itself forward. Kaku's breath fogged the screen, though the room was warm. "It's measuring compatibility," he whispered. "Not with the organism, with Earth." The ring expanded, growing wider, thinner, more refined, until it resembled the iris of an impossible eye stretched across kilometers. Its rotations grew more complex, layers moving at different speeds, locking into positions that matched Earth's orientation, Earth's orbit, Earth's magnetic tilt. The being wasn't observing anymore, it was evaluating. And then Webb detected something that froze the entire observatory. Earth's atmosphere reacted. Nitrogen levels trembled by the tiniest fraction. Ionospheric particles aligned like iron filings. Even the magnetosphere shifted, bending almost imperceptibly toward the colossal being, as though Earth sensed something familiar and moved to face it. No one could explain it. No one dared to. Something ancient inside the planet responded to the arrival, as though answering a call, a memory, a command. The colossal being pulsed once, a deep, gentle ripple across the void. And the Earth beneath those watching screens pulsed back. Not visually, not seismically, not with light, with gravity. A faint rhythmic tremor in the planet's gravitational field, subtle, delicate, but unmistakably synchronized. Earth was answering, responding, obeying. And that was the moment Kaku whispered the words no one wanted to hear. It didn't come for the organism. It came for the planet. The colossal being held its position in the void, suspended between the slit it had emerged from and the blue sphere rotating quietly in the distance. For the first time, its vast geometry stabilized, its shifting fractal plates ceasing their rhythmic churn, its spiraling limbs folding into a symmetrical lattice that pointed directly at Earth. It had finished observing. It had finished evaluating. Now it was preparing. Webb caught the faint shimmer of a new structure forming along the being's underside, thin filaments branching like icy veins across its enormous frame. They extended outward in coordinated waves, knitting themselves into patterns that resembled a biological nervous system made entirely of crystalline resonance. Each filament pulsed along a frequency that resonated with the faint, gravitational tremor Earth had emitted moments earlier. The two were synchronizing, slowly, deliberately, inevitably. Kaku exhaled as if all the air had been pulled from his lungs. "It's linking," he whispered. "Something on Earth, something ancient. It recognizes this thing." The being emitted another pulse, gentle, deep, steady. Webb's sensors dimmed briefly from the shock, unable to fully process the wave. The pulse drifted toward Earth, not as a beam, not as a projectile, but as a soft reconfiguration of the vacuum itself, like space inhaling before releasing a long-forgotten breath. When the pulse reached Earth's magnetosphere, something impossible happened. Earth answered louder. A gravitational echo radiated outward, stronger than before, as if the planet had been waiting for the second pulse. The ionosphere glowed faintly at the poles, shimmering with auroras that formed geometric patterns no natural magnetic storm could produce, triangles, spirals, concentric circles rotating in slow unison. Webb zoomed in so far the atmosphere blurred into streaks of soft blue light. Through that haze, something was happening beneath the clouds. Something deep, something immense. Seismic sensors across the world began registering low-frequency tremors, not destructive, not tectonic, but rhythmic. Africa, South America, the Pacific, Antarctica, all vibrating at the same interval, the same signature, the same reply. The planet wasn't resisting the being's presence, it was harmonizing with it. Kaku closed his eyes, pained. Earth remembers it. Meanwhile, the colossal being widened its ring-like structure, the iris of light spinning outward until it resembled an enormous mandala floating in the void. Each layer glowed with its own hue, indigo, violet, silver, pale gold, forming a shifting tapestry of wavelengths that melded into a single coherent pattern. The pattern rotated, then projected. A wide circular beam of soft, shimmering geometry expanded toward Earth, slow enough to be gentle, fast enough to be unstoppable. Unlike light or radiation, the projection didn't brighten the darkness. Instead, it overwrote it, replacing the empty void with patterns that curled through space like living equations mapping a forgotten relationship between two ancient entities. When the beam touched the planet, clouds across the globe froze for a fraction of a second, just long enough for satellite images to capture the impossible. The entire atmosphere patterned itself briefly with the same mandala, massive faint shapes visible only in the infrared spectrum wrapping around Earth like a second skin. The atmosphere was being imprinted. Kaku's voice cracked. It's verifying compatibility. It's checking environmental resonance. This is what you do before integration, he swallowed. It's checking whether Earth can host whatever system it belongs to. The colossal being emitted another pulse, but this one was different, sharper, more precise, like a tuning fork struck in the heart of the universe. The pulse penetrated the atmosphere, slipping through clouds, oceans, mountains, cities, until it reached the crust. Earth answered with a sound, a deep planetary groan, not seismic, not tectonic, but harmonic, a vibration that resonated through the mantle and reflected off the core. For several seconds, the planet hummed like a single, enormous instrument responding to a pitch it had been tuned for billions of years ago. And then something beneath the crust stirred. Webb's instruments detected the shift first, reading density changes thousands of meters below the surface, cavities expanding, crystalline veins lighting up, ancient structures awakening in places where no human architecture could possibly exist. Kaku's eyes widened as the global map lit up with dozens of hotspots, lines of energy threading themselves across continents, like a buried network powering back on after a sleep so long the planet forgot it was there. These aren't geological faults, he said, nearly whispering. These are installations, subsurface nodes, ancient. The nodes pulsed in perfect synchrony with the colossal being. Then the creature outside Earth unfolded its largest structure yet, a vast arm of light that extended not toward Atlas, not toward the glyphs, but toward Earth itself. Webb's sensors cracked under the data load. The feed flickered, telemetry spiked, distortion bled across the image. Then, clarity. The arm was not reaching out to harm the planet, it was reaching out to activate it. And as the first tip of that fractal limb aligned with Earth's magnetic north, Kaku breathed the words that would haunt every scientist who reviewed the footage afterward. It didn't come for the planet. He swallowed, voice shaking. It came to turn the planet back on. The colossal being's fractal limb extended toward Earth with impossible steadiness, its geometry unfolding into thinner and thinner branches until the limb resembled a massive crystalline root, unfurling through the void. Each branch glowed with a muted iridescence, pulsing in time with the gravitational rhythm Earth had begun echoing moments earlier. It wasn't reaching to take anything, it was reaching to connect, like a key approaching a lock forged in another age. Webb zoomed in until the image strained against the limits of resolution. The branching structure didn't end in a point or a hand or a tool. Instead, the limb terminated in a lattice of glowing nodes, each one rotating with exquisite precision, like tiny stellar systems orbiting around one another. And as the limb drew closer to Earth, those nodes began shifting their alignment, slowly rotating until they matched the orientation of the resurfacing subsurface networks detected earlier. Kaku leaned forward, breath shallow. It's matching the planet's buried architecture, he said softly. Those nodes aren't random, they're interfaces. The limb reached Earth's magnetosphere and the air itself seemed to tighten. Not physically, space doesn't compress that way, but perceptually, like a sudden pressure change before a storm. The planet responded immediately. Auroras burst to life across both poles, spiraling outward in patterns far too geometrically perfect to be natural. The lights didn't dance. They arranged themselves, swirling into concentric rings, echoing. The colossal being's fractal limb. It wasn't just Earth answering, it was Earth preparing. Electricity flowed through the ionosphere in organized pulses, traveling along ancient fault lines that glowed faintly from deep underground. Satellite telemetry flickered as the entire magnetic field resonated like a tuning fork. Birds took silent flight. Marine creatures shifted direction mid-swim. Even human hearts, sensitive in their own strange ways to magnetic changes, skipped in irregular unison. The colossal being eased its limb into the outer magnetosphere, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. The nodes at the tip brightened, rotating faster and faster until they blurred into a single luminous disk. And then the connection happened. No flash, no explosion, no seismic blast. Just contact. A gentle, almost loving press of cosmic geometry against Earth's invisible magnetic surface, and the planet answered like a sleeping giant inhaling for the first time in ages. The subsurface nodes flared to life in a web of crystalline light. Patterns spread across continents, faint, subtle, visible only in deep seismic and magnetic readings, but their presence was undeniable. The Earth was activating an ancient network buried miles beneath rock and ocean, one that mirrored the colossal being's architecture with unnerving fidelity. The harmonics deepened, the tremors sharpened, the global hum intensified. Kaku's face had gone pale, lit only by the trembling glow of a dozen screens displaying patterns no scientist had ever theorized. This can't be natural, he whispered. This can't be planetary evolution. This is engineered, designed. The colossal being sent another pulse, softer this time, almost like a parent coaxing a child awake. Earth answered with a deep groan echoing through its mantle, long, low, resonant. The harmonic alignment reached a peak that made Webb's instruments buzz with interference. Then something moved beneath the crust, not tectonic plates, not magma, not fault lines, structures, huge structures, ancient crystalline frameworks hundreds of kilometers across, buried in the mantle itself, began shifting, rotating slightly, aligning with the colossal being's limb as though they had been waiting for this exact moment. Heat signatures flared along these subterranean arcs, and electromagnetic readings spiked as dormant currents flowed through the networks for the first time since the dawn of the planet. "We're not watching first contact," Kaku whispered. "We're watching reactivation." The colossal being increased the brightness of its limb, sending a wave of resonance through the connecting nodes. Earth responded with another gravitational pulse, stronger, clearer, like a heartbeat finding its rhythm. The global nodes stabilized, locking into a pattern that mirrored the being's geometry. The planet wasn't resisting, it wasn't overwhelmed, it wasn't breaking, it was sinking. The colossal being released another pulse, lower, deeper, almost imperceptible. Subsurface nodes glowed, ocean currents shifted, magnetic lines braided into spirals, the Earth's fields spun into harmonic symmetry, and deep beneath the planet's surface, something woke. A massive crystalline structure, larger than a mountain, older than the continents, lit up with a cold, silent radiance. It pulsed once, sending a tremor through the mantle that resonated in perfect unison with the colossal being's limb. Webb detected the spike with painful clarity. Kaku stared, stunned. "That's not a reactor," he whispered. "It's not a machine. It's not a life form." He swallowed. "It's a receiver." The colossal being had not come to Earth to destroy it. It had not come to conquer. It had not come to communicate. It had come because part of itself, part of its network, part of its ancient system was already here, buried beneath Earth since long before life began. And now, after billions of years of silence, the system was reconnecting. Earth wasn't being scanned. It wasn't being judged. It wasn't being prepared. It was being claimed. The colossal being's limb pulsed again, slow, deliberate, ancient, like a bell tolling across the void. Each pulse sank deeper into Earth's fields, threading itself through the subsurface network with relentless precision. The dormant crystalline structures beneath the crust responded, flaring brighter with each wave. They weren't random deposits. They weren't mineral anomalies. They were arranged, aligned in vast geometric webs stretching across tectonic plates, as though the entire planet had been seeded with an architecture humanity never knew it carried. As the networks awakened, Earth's magnetic field tightened, then elongated, stretching upward like a column connecting the planet to the colossal being. The auroras intensified, carving spirals across the polar sky that matched the fractal geometry of the being's limb. From orbit, the lights resembled a beacon spiraling upward, as though Earth itself was signalling, "I am online. I am awake." Kaku gripped the edge of the console, his voice barely a breath. "This isn't terraforming. This isn't analysis. This is reconnection. Reboot." He swallowed, his eyes locked on the seismic feeds. "And the planet is welcoming it." Below the crust, the ancient receiver responded again. Another pulse, another tremor, another wave of electromagnetic resonance rolling through the mantle. This time, the response didn't stop underground. It reached the oceans. Across the Pacific, sensors recorded sudden, coordinated shifts in deep-water currents, massive circulatory patterns swinging into alignment with the subsurface network. It wasn't violent. It wasn't storm-like. It was structured, spiraled, mathematical, like water remembering an old path etched into the bones of the planet. The Atlantic followed. The Indian, Ocean, the Arctic, all synchronizing to the colossal being's pattern. For the first time in recorded history, the world's oceans moved with the same global rhythm, as though responding to a conductor only Earth could hear. Animals felt it too. Swarms of fish shifted in perfect spirals. Whales changed migration paths in sudden arcs. Birds flocked into geometric formations never before documented. The entire biosphere felt a memory waking. Then came the second shockwave. Webb registered it first. A faint surge of exotic particles passing through the vacuum. Particles that shouldn't be able to exist outside extreme gravitational environments. The wave moved like a whisper through space, brushing past the colossal being, slipping into its fractal limb, and finally sinking into Earth's awakened network. Every subsurface node pulsed at once. One global heartbeat. A single, unified resonance. The colossal being responded instantly. Its geometry expanded outward, plates unfurling into new configurations like a cosmic flower opening to full bloom. Then the void behind it rippled. At first, the ripple appeared as a faint shimmer, like heat distortion bending starlight. Then the shimmer thickened, spreading outward as if invisible currents were moving behind the fabric of space. The slit the being had emerged from widened slightly, releasing another wave of those exotic particles. Kaku stiffened. "It's not alone," he whispered. "There are more on the other side." Webb's image sharpened. Behind the first being, still vast, still half-shrouded in that impossible event boundary, other shapes stirred in the darkness. Massive geometries coiled in gentle spirals. Lattices of crystalline architecture rotated like drifting continents. Fractal limbs flexed in slow-motion arcs. It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't an army. It was a migration. A slow, deliberate gathering of things that had once seeded the galaxy, now returning along paths they had carved before Earth existed. And Earth was responding like a beacon reactivated. The colossal being tilted its massive frame toward the planet again, as if listening to a frequency buried deep within the molten core. The subsurface networks answered with a synchronized pulse, faster now, stronger, more confident. The planet wasn't confused or resisting. It was aligning with something older than tectonics, older than the moon, older even than the oceans. Kaku shook his head, whispering to no one. This planet wasn't chosen. It was built, as a node, a dormant node in a cosmic network. The colossal being extended a second limb, mirroring the first, forming a symmetrical arc around Earth's magnetic field. Slowly, deliberately, the two limbs began to rotate around one another like gears, generating a massive toroidal field that wrapped the planet in a subtle shimmer. The field tightened, the subsurface network brightened, and deep beneath the crust, the ancient receiver split open like a blooming flower, revealing an interior chamber glowing with crystalline light. Webb caught the details. A spiral pattern, a central void, a shape that matched the organism retrieved from Atlas. Kaku's voice cracked. Oh, God. Earth wasn't waiting for something to arrive. He stared, horrified. It was waiting for something to return. The colossal being's limbs locked into place. The chamber beneath Earth pulsed. Something old enough to predate human memory, old enough to predate life itself, began to wake inside the planet. Earth wasn't just a world. It was a cradle, and the colossal beings were here to open it. The colossal being's twin limbs rotated with increasing momentum, weaving a toroidal envelope around the Earth so delicately that it barely disturbed the vacuum, yet strongly enough that Webb's instruments began slipping out of calibration. Gyroscopes drifted, thermal sensors jittered. Even the telescope's orbit shifted by a fraction of a millimeter as the field tightened. Earth responded in perfect synchrony. The subsurface crystalline nodes pulsed brighter, their harmonic signatures rising from a low tectonic hum into a tonal sequence that felt eerily deliberate, like a song emerging from stone, like a memory reassembling itself in layers, each pulse adding a fragment of forgotten identity. The mantle vibrated, fault lines resonated. Even the rotation of the planet altered by an immeasurable sliver, as though Earth were adjusting its posture to match the colossal being's geometry. Then the impossible happened. A second chamber, this one beneath the Pacific, lit up. And then a third beneath Eurasia, a fourth near Antarctica. One by one, ancient crystalline structures buried miles beneath the crust awakened, forming a vast interconnected grid that hummed in synchrony with the colossal being. Webb detected the pattern instantly. The nodes weren't independent installations. They were pieces of a single, planetary-scale organism, one that had been dormant for billions of years. Kaku's voice trembled. "We're not watching activation. We're watching assembly." The network wasn't just powering up, it was combining. The colossal being extended a third limb, shorter, sharper, more focused. Its tip formed into a crystalline point that glowed with an intense, concentrated brilliance. It moved downward in a silent glide, passing through the toroidal field and aligning itself directly with the chamber beneath Earth's mantle. Every subsurface node flared at once. A deep rumble echoed through the mantle, slow, rolling, ancient. The crust didn't crack. The oceans didn't rise. Nothing catastrophic occurred. But every sensor on Earth trembled as something vast unfolded beneath the surface. The chamber's central spiral began rotating, not its walls, not the crystal, the void inside it. A swirling emptiness shaped like a vortex began forming at the heart of the chamber, an absence of matter so pure that nearby seismic waves bent around it. Space itself was curling inside the planet. Kaku pressed his hands to his temples, shaking his head in disbelief. No, that's not a reactor. That's not a power source, his voice cracked. That's a gateway. The colossal being lowered its crystalline point toward the swirling void, and the chamber responded by widening, its spiral unfurling like the petals of an enormous stone lotus. The void inside deepened, drawing in ambient energy from the surrounding mantle. Pressure didn't rise, heat didn't spike. Instead, energy flowed inward with impossible calmness, like a river returning to the ocean. The colossal being pulsed once. Earth answered with a pulse of its own. The synchronization tightened. Something was aligning across distances larger than imagination. Then, from deep within the swirling void, an outline began to form. Not of a creature, not of a machine, not of any recognizable shape. A silhouette, faint, flickering, like a shadow being cast from a higher dimension into ours, then pulled apart by the gravitational tides of reality itself. Webb's enhanced filters struggled to find edges, lines, boundaries, but the silhouette refused to resolve cleanly. It was too large to understand, too ancient, too layered. Something was trying to emerge, or awaken, from inside the planet. The colossal being above grew brighter, its entire structure humming with resonance. The beings beyond the slit stirred in response, their movements slow and reverent, like an audience watching a ceremony that had waited epochs to begin. Kaku's whisper filled the trembling silence. They're not here to harvest Earth. They're not here to invade. They're not here to communicate. He swallowed hard. They're here to awaken what they left behind. The void inside the chamber widened. Its edges sharpened. The silhouette grew denser, more defined. It was enormous, larger than mountains, larger than continents, a structure, alive, dormant, coiled within the planet like a sleeping titan waiting for the right frequency, the right signal, the right command. The colossal being extended all three limbs toward Earth, forming a triangle of radiant geometry. The subsurface chamber brightened until the crust itself glowed faintly in satellite images, and then for the first time the silhouette moved, A slow, gentle shift, a rolling curve, like a creature stretching after a timeless sleep. This was no planetary anomaly, no geological marvel, no unknown Earth form. This was intentional, placed, hidden, preserved. A seed of something cosmic buried inside our world before life arose. Kaku's voice dropped into a haunted whisper. Earth isn't being activated. He paused, the realization finally settling. It's being returned to its original purpose. The colossal being pulsed once more. The silhouette inside Earth responded, and the planet rumbled with the first breath of whatever had slept within it for aeons. The silhouette inside Earth shifted again, slow, hesitant, as if relearning the motion of a body it had not inhabited in uncountable ages. The movement sent a deep harmonic tremor through the mantle, a vibration so low it blurred beneath seismographs yet resonated through the entire biosphere. Animals froze mid-stride. Birds circled in perfect spirals. Even human beings, countless millions unaware of the awakening beneath them, felt a faint internal pressure, like the moment before a storm breaks, when the air becomes too still. Above, the colossal being lowered its third limb until the crystalline point hovered less than a planet's breadth from Earth's surface, its geometry reconfigured, peeling apart into layered spirals that resembled an unfurling galaxy in miniature. Each spiral glowed with a wavelength that didn't exist on the electromagnetic spectrum. Webb's processors could only register it as interference, though every scientist watching felt it wasn't noise at all. It was invitation. The subsurface nodes responded in perfect unison, their crystalline structures realigned, rotating like gears in an impossibly ancient machine. The continental plates trembled, not violently, but rhythmically, adjusting, shifting, accommodating the rotation of the buried chamber as though the crust itself had been designed to flex around this moment. Then the void at the chamber's centre deepened further. What Webb had previously interpreted as a silhouette now sharpened, its edges forming fractal arcs, plates, spirals, and glowing veins of energy. It was not emerging fully, not yet. It was positioning itself, aligning its vast body with the colossal being's trifold geometry. Kaku whispered, "This isn't a creature waking. It's a system coming online." The colossal being above pulsed, and its signal rippled across Earth's magnetic field, this time branching into thousands of thin tendrils of energy that wrapped around the planet like soft threads. They sank through the atmosphere and into the crust, threading themselves into the subsurface network with devastating precision. Earth glowed, faintly, subtly, from within, like a filament warming inside a colossal bulb. The latent structure beneath the mantle pulsed brighter. Layers rotated in opposite directions, generating a low hum felt across the world. Water in glasses vibrated, leaves shivered without wind. Deep-sea drones captured bubbles rising in perfect spirals from the seafloor. Every part of the Earth was responding, not passively, not fearfully, instinctively, like a heart remembering its beat. And then the colossal being transmitted a deeper pulse, one that bent the vacuum around its limbs. Space itself rippled outward, echoing across the solar system. Mars's thin atmosphere quivered. Jupiter's magnetosphere wavered. Even the sun's corona jittered as though responding to a command it could feel but not decipher. Earth responded immediately. The chamber beneath the crust flared with blinding intensity, so powerful that seismographs around the globe spiked into unreadable ranges before going dark entirely. In that moment, for the briefest fraction of a second, the planet's gravitational signature flickered. The Earth grew lighter, not physically, not permanently. But for an instant, gravity loosened as though the planet had exhaled. The colossal being leaned in, light spilled from its geometry, casting silent shadows across the void. Shadows that curved in impossible directions, bending around Earth and looping back toward the slit in space behind it. The beings beyond the slit moved restlessly, shifting like a vast chorus preparing for a final verse they had waited billions of years to sing. The silhouette inside Earth moved again, this time with greater purpose. Its massive plates slid into alignment, locking into position like armour being donned. The chamber shook with a deep resonant ring that travelled upward, reaching through the crust, the mantle, the atmosphere, and into space. A beam of pure resonance erupted from the planet, invisible to the human eye yet bright as a star to every instrument scanning the void. It shot upward, twisting into a spiral that mirrored the colossal being's geometry. Kaku's voice barely emerged. "That's not an energy output," he whispered. "That's a handshake protocol." Earth was connecting. The colossal being responded, lowering its body until its central lattice aligned perfectly with Earth's spiral beam. The moment the two touched, even across the vast gulf of space between them, Webb's entire array dimmed. Colours collapsed, light fragmented, space jittered. Something had formed between Earth and the being. Not a tether, not a beam, a channel, a direct link. Instantaneously, the subsurface nodes pulsed again, so rapidly now that the entire planet vibrated like a giant tuning crystal. The silhouette inside Earth shifted more boldly, unfolding its body within the chamber. Plates unfurling, rings expanding, crystalline fractals emerging from the mantle like a cosmic chrysalis. It wasn't leaving the planet. It wasn't escaping. It was rising. The colossal being's limbs flared, casting long, curved shadows around Earth. Kaku swallowed hard, voice trembling. "It's not coming out to destroy the world." He shook his head slowly, horrified. "It's coming out to finish what was started billions of years ago." The Earth's mantle roared with awakening, and the planetary heartbeat strengthened until even the upper atmosphere vibrated with the rhythm. Inside the planet, something ancient, something enormous, something that belonged to the colossal beings, began lifting itself toward the surface. Earth was no longer a world. It was becoming a doorway. A low rolling tremor whispered through the mantle, not violent, not destructive, but deep, controlled, and rhythmic. The kind of movement that felt less like an earthquake and more like a planet adjusting its posture after a long dreamless sleep. As the buried structure rose, molten rock parted around it without resistance, as though the Earth's interior recognized the shape moving through it and yielded instinctively. Webb's sensors captured the moment the chamber's central void expanded further, pulling in energy from every awakened node across the globe. Thin streams of plasma-like light began spiraling upward from deep within the mantle, weaving together into a single column. It rose slowly, like the first breath of an ancient titan being drawn up through stone lungs. The column passed through layers of crust that should have shattered, yet nothing broke. The rock made way for it, bending molecular bonds around the structure with impossible ease. Kaku stared in silent awe. "It's not excavating. It's phasing," he whispered. "It's moving through the Earth as though the planet is fluid." Above, the colossal being altered its posture, shifting its limbs outward until they formed a vast triangular frame around Earth. Each limb brightened with a distinct colour, one violet, one silver, one pale gold, merging into a halo that enclosed the planet in a soft, otherworldly glow. The beings beyond the slit in space grew restless, their silhouettes shimmering with anticipation. They weren't approaching. They weren't preparing to intervene. They were watching. This moment was ritual. The column of light inside Earth widened, growing brighter until it resembled a star forming at the centre of the planet. The silhouette inside rose with it, massive, elegant, layered with crystalline geometry that mirrored the colossal being's architecture. Webb caught flashes of detail between waves of distortion, plates interlocking like armoured petals, fractal limbs folding and unfolding in slow, deliberate arcs, rings rotating around a core of impossible density. This thing wasn't a creature, it wasn't a machine, it wasn't a structure, it was all three: a living architecture, a designed intelligence, and an ancient relic of a civilization that shaped worlds before Earth carried oceans. As it rose, the subsurface nodes flashed in rapid succession, like a series of switches being turned on in precise sequence. Heat maps lit up across the globe: Chile, Siberia, the Himalayas, the Indian Ocean Ridge, the Sahara, the Canadian Shield. Every continent responded, every tectonic plate hummed, every deep node pulsed at the same frequency. Earth was conducting a global operation. The buried structure ascended through the mantle like a drifting leviathan of light, and as it neared the crust, the colossal being above Earth extended a narrow filament from its central lattice, a filament that descended toward the planet's surface with surgical precision. Kaku whispered the only word his mind could reach for: Guidance! The filament reached the atmosphere, slicing through it without producing heat or shock waves. Clouds parted around it, curling into spirals shaped by the being's fractal geometry. Rain paused in midair. Wind stilled. The filament descended until it hovered mere kilometers above the ground, searching, sensing, aligning. At the same moment, in 1,000 locations across Earth, buried crystalline conduits flared up, thin rods of light piercing upward from underground, pointing toward the descending filament like an array of instruments tuning themselves. The colossal being pulsed. Every conduit on Earth answered. The buried structure shuddered in response, rotating its plates into tighter formation. The column of light carrying it brightened, the brightness not destructive, not explosive, but pure, ordered, intelligent. For the first time, faint lines of the structure breached the crust. In several remote regions, sensors picked up momentary distortions, brief flickers of crystalline shapes rising into the air before sinking back beneath the ground. They weren't physically emerging, they were phasing, locked between dimensions, as though the structure was aligning itself with the surface, but not yet meant to fully enter human reality. It wasn't time, not without the colossal being's final instruction. Then Webb detected a shift. The colossal being's entire body tilted, aligning its central lattice with the ascending structure inside Earth. The air around its limbs shimmered. The slit in space pulsed with excitement, and the entities beyond it leaned closer. This was the culmination. The colossal being emitted a pulse so deep it shook the solar wind itself. Earth absorbed it. The buried structure responded with a roar, a gravitational wave that rippled through the planet's core and outward into space. Satellites drifted. Tides surged. Birds across continents launched into flight simultaneously, as though startled by something too large to ignore. The structure rose higher. Its first full silhouette broke through the crust, visible only in the infrared and gravity-mapped wavelengths, but unmistakable. A colossal crystalline arch, laced with spirals of light, forming the upper crest of an ancient rising titan designed to interface with the colossal being above. Kaku's voice trembled. "This isn't awakening a sleeper. This is docking." The emerging structure pulsed in perfect synchrony with the being. Earth's crust vibrated with anticipation, and the colossal network beyond the slit glowed brighter. Dozens, maybe hundreds of beings answering in resonance. Earth was not being consumed. It was being reconnected to something vast, something ancient, something it had once belonged to. The buried titan rose further, plates unlocking, rings expanding, and the colossal being lowered its limbs to complete the union. The colossal being's limbs descended with a grace that felt impossibly gentle for a structure spanning kilometers, its fractal, geometry folding inward, fracturing into strands of shimmering light that extended toward the rising titan beneath Earth's crust. The atmosphere around each limb vibrated, bending sunlight into thin concentric halos, as though the sky itself were bowing around the being's presence. Below, the buried titan rose higher. The crystalline arch that had pierced the crust expanded, unfurling its plates like a massive petals carved from living mineral. Each layer shimmered with stored luminosity, ancient light, trapped inside the Earth for billions of years, now bleeding softly into the air. No human eye could see it, but satellites captured the faint glow, a lacework of geometric lines spreading across desolate regions, weaving the surface of the planet into an invisible tapestry. The Titan was emerging not as a creature crawling from the deep, but as a cathedral rising from the planet that once hid it. Deep underground, its body continued ascending through mantle and stone, moving through solid matter as though the planet were no obstacle at all. Massive spiral arms flexed, rotating their segments to match the colossal being's limb alignment. The Titan wasn't climbing. It was synchronizing, every movement guided by a ritual older than the continents. Kaku could barely speak. He sat frozen, knuckles pressed white against the console. "They engineered this planet around it," he whispered. "The crust, the plates, the nodes, even the oceans. Earth wasn't chosen because it was suitable." His voice fell to a tremor. "It was constructed to house this thing." The colossal being emitted a soft pulse. Earth answered with a deep harmonic hum that shook the ionosphere. A second crystalline arch breached the crust kilometers from the first, then a third, then a fourth. Each emerging structure aligned into a perfect circle, an ancient ring of titanic spires rising from the mantle like the skeleton of a forgotten world engine. Their tops glowed with a cold, pale luminescence, each one radiating a different wavelength that threaded upward to the colossal being's limbs, a planetary docking array. The Titan beneath Earth's crust was nearly at the surface now, its core rotating, its fractal rings spinning with growing urgency. Heat signatures spiked, but not like magma. This was structured thermal emission, shaped into spirals, each one matching the colossal being's geometry. Earth's surface temperature rose by a fraction, global but controlled, like the warming breath of something vast beneath the soil. And then, without warning, the colossal being began lowering itself, not by propulsion, not by motion in the conventional sense, but by bending the fabric of space around its enormous body. Webb's visuals blurred as distances folded and stretched. Stars rippled like reflections trembling across water. Even Earth's horizon trembled as the being descended, slow, reverent, like a god stepping toward an altar. Its limbs met. The tops of the emerging arches, one connection, then another, then the last. Each limb locked into place with a soft, radiant pulse, a circuit, a bridge, a reunion. Kaku whispered, "It's completing the interface." The instant the limbs connected, the Titan inside the Earth moved. Not rising, not climbing, aligning. As though Earth were a shell cracking open to reveal the ancient celestial machine inside. The Titan rotated its crystalline body into perfect symmetry with the colossal being's framework. Its arms folded into spirals, its plates locked, its rings expanded. Then, silence. Not the absence of sound, the absence of motion. The entire planet froze in a moment of staggering cosmic stillness. Wind halted. Clouds stopped drifting. The oceans ceased their endless churn. Every biological rhythm paused as though Earth had been placed in suspension. Time didn't stop, but something deeper did. Earth was being rewritten. The colossal being's core brightened until it resembled a second sun made of slow, spiraling geometry. Its light passed down its limbs, into the arches, into the Titan beneath the surface, and into the entire subsurface network. Earth ignited. Not with flame, not with destruction, with memory. From the titanium-rich mantle beneath Africa to the submerged cratons of the Pacific, the subsurface lattice lit up like a cosmic neural network, firing pulses across the entire planet like synapses reconnecting after 1,000,000 lost lifetimes. The Titan shuddered. A deep, seismic resonance rippled outward, but it wasn't an earthquake, it was breath. The first breath of something that had been dormant since before Earth cooled. The colossal being leaned closer, not in dominance, not in conquest, but in absolute ancient familiarity, as though welcoming back a long-lost companion finally waking from its burial. Kaku whispered the unthinkable. "The Earth, it's not being terraformed." His breath shook. "It's being reactivated, completed, reunited." The Titan's core began pulsing in the same rhythm as the colossal being. Two hearts separated across cosmic history, beating as one again. And deep in the mantle, still rising, still aligning, the Titan finally rotated its face toward the surface, like an ancient deity opening its eyes beneath the world that had hidden it. The Titan's emergence altered the very heartbeat of the planet. As it rotated its immense crystalline face toward the crust, a slow, shimmering ripple passed through the Earth's magnetic field. Satellites recorded it as a quiet oscillation, too smooth to be a storm, too structured to be natural. It was a pattern, a rhythm, a signal, the same harmonic frequency that the colossal being had used from the moment it arrived. The Titan was replying. Down in the mantle, plates of luminous minerals slid into alignment like the shifting gears of a world-sized mechanism. Spiral arms folded neatly along its sides. Its rings tucked themselves inward. The crystalline spine running through its core pulsed brighter, emitting waves of structured gravity that rippled outward in precise repeating intervals. Every mountain range, every ocean trench, every continental plate. All trembled in perfect synchrony. Earth wasn't resisting the Titan's ascent, it was assisting it. Above, the colossal being lowered its central lattice until it nearly touched the upper atmosphere. Its limbs tightened their grip on the emerging arches, and thin filaments branched outward, stitching themselves into the planet's magnetic field like needles weaving a wound shut. Every filament glowed with the same colour as the node it touched beneath the crust. This was not invasion. This was reinstatement. And then the Titan spoke. Not with sound, not with light, not with anything the human senses were designed to interpret. But Webb's instruments captured the pulse, a deep subgravitational oscillation that moved through the planet like an ancient bell being struck in the core. The colossal being answered. Its entire body responded with a soft radiance. The slit behind it brightened. The entities beyond stirred in resonance. Kaku stared with wide, unblinking eyes. They're communicating, not with language, with memory. Memory encoded in geometry, memory encoded in gravity, memory encoded in the physics of existence itself. The Titan rose higher. Its crystalline face, once submerged beneath miles of rock, phased fully through the crust, emerging into the air without displacing a single grain of soil. It hovered, half in our dimension, half in another, shimmering like a reflection on rippling water. Its eyes, if the term could even apply, were vast spiraled lenses that refracted the colossal being's light into layered patterns. When the Titan looked upward, its gaze was not curiosity. It was recognition. Something ancient inside the earth was seeing its counterpart again. The colossal being extended its fourth limb, a structure that had remained folded until now. This limb was different from the others, more delicate, more refined, its plates translucent, its spirals tighter, as though this appendage's purpose required precision beyond all others. It descended slowly, slowly, toward the Titan's face. As the limb approached, the air above Earth vibrated with a strange tension, quiet, soft, almost reverent. Clouds bent around the limb in spiraling arcs. Lightning appeared briefly inside the spirals, crawling along them like nervous energy preparing for something monumental. Kaku whispered, "This is the interface, the final connection." The Titan lifted one of its own limbs, massive, fractal, composed of plates that pulsed with ancestral light. The two limbs, cosmic parent and cosmic child, approached each other with a slowness that felt ceremonial. Then, contact, a silent meeting of two ancient structures, two parts of the same civilization, two halves of a broken system now, reconnecting. The instant their limbs touched, the Titan convulsed, not in pain, but in release. Its entire body lit up from its subterranean base to the translucent plates hovering above the surface. Fractal lines shot through its crystal like rivers of starlight rediscovering ancient pathways. Earth responded. The planetary hum rose in pitch. Subsurface networks fired in perfect sequence. Magnetic field lines braided themselves tighter. The colossal being brightened further. The slit behind it pulsed. Other beings beyond began shifting into alignment, forming a vast semicircle around the event like a council returning to a long-forgotten assembly. The connection strengthened, and the Titan drew its first full breath. A wave of gravitational resonance erupted from its core, washing across the globe. Tides lifted, clouds rippled, birds halted mid-flight, suspended for a heartbeat as though the very concept of motion had been rewritten. Webb recorded the planet itself expanding, by less than a millimetre, but unmistakably. Earth was changing shape to accommodate the Titan's awakening. Kaku's voice was barely a whisper. This is the original state of the planet. We've been living inside a dormant machine." The Titan's wings unfolded, vast crystalline sails spanning hundreds of kilometres, each one emitting harmonic tones that intertwined with the colossal being's pulses. Their combined frequencies rippled into space, passing through the slit like a call echoing across dimensions. The beings beyond answered back, and then the Titan lifted further through the crust, emerging almost completely into the atmosphere, phasing between worlds as though adjusting its dimensional anchor. The colossal being closed its limbs around Earth gently, not in capture, but in completion. Two halves of a forgotten cosmic architecture reuniting after an eternity apart, and deep inside the planet's mantle something else stirred in response. A second chamber, a second Titan, another ancient structure rising. Earth wasn't hosting one sleeper, it was hosting many, and they were all waking up. The first Titan hovered above the Earth like a half-phased monument, its crystalline limbs shimmering in and out of physical reality, as though undecided which world it truly belonged to. But while it stabilized in the atmosphere, the second chamber beneath the crust began to tremble, its dormant plates rattling like the ribs of some buried colossus rediscovering its own shape after geological ages of silence. Seismic sensors worldwide lit up again, not with the chaotic signatures of earthquakes, but with a resonance so clean, so mathematically perfect, it stunned the entire monitoring network. Lines that should have been jagged and frantic appeared instead as smooth spirals, repeating with such precision they resembled the waveform of a cosmic tuning fork. Earth wasn't breaking. It was tuning itself. The colossal being above Earth turned its main body ever so slightly, as though listening to the second Titan rousing beneath the mantle. Its limbs adjusted their posture, widening, rebalancing, redistributing energy through the toroidal field that now wrapped the entire planet in a shimmering sheath. The slit behind it pulsed with rising light. The other entities beyond leaned closer, their silhouettes shifting in synchronized arcs like a choir leaning forward, anticipating the next note in a celestial song. The buried Titan stirred again. This one was larger. Webb detected its mass before its shape, a shifting gravitational signature the size of a small continent, rising from deep beneath the Pacific plate. Magma parted around it like curtains pulled aside by unseen hands. Hydrothermal vents dimmed. Undersea mountains flexed as though bowing in reverence. And then, through the thick crust, the faintest glimmer of crystalline light seeped upward, not the cool, pale luminescence of the first Titan. This one glowed with a golden interior fire, a different cast, a different purpose. The first Titan responded immediately. Its crystalline wings folded closer to its body, spirals tightening, plates locking, as if clearing space for the second to rise. The colossal being overhead shifted its limbs, adjusting orientation. The toroidal field stretched wider, making room for the emergence. Kaku leaned near the screen, breath shallow. "Oh my god! There wasn't supposed to be just one. This planet, it's a repository." The light beneath the Pacific intensified, glowing through the ocean floor until even satellites captured the faint symmetrical patterns forming beneath the surface. Vortices appeared in the water above, enormous spirals hundreds of kilometers wide, rotating not with storms or currents, but with the frequency of the rising Titan's pulse. Every whale in that ocean turned toward the glow. Every school of fish spiraled in sync. The entire marine biosphere reacted. Then the second Titan rose, not breaking through rock, phasing through it. Its golden plates slid upward like molten glass cooling into shape mid-air. Spires of crystalline gold arched through the crust, forming gigantic curved frames that bent the ocean around them. Not water displacement, water alignment. The sea bent, parted, curled into symmetrical arcs, obeying the Titan's geometry. It was breathtaking. It was impossible. It was intentional. The Titan's emergence caused no tsunami, no shockwave, no destruction. Instead, water formed spirals around its rising body, climbing in elegant rings along its crystalline sides like a celestial staircase. The Titan continued its ascent, golden limbs unfurling like the petals of a colossal cosmic flower, awakening under its parent's gaze. And then for the first time the two Titans saw each other. The first Titan turned, fractal limbs adjusting to face the newcomer. Its spiraled eyes brightened, refracting the colossal being's glow into shimmering patterns. The second Titan responded with a golden pulse, softer, deeper, a tone so ancient that even the atmosphere vibrated. The colossal being above Earth expanded with pride. These weren't biological children. They were constructed lineage, living architecture from a single civilization. Earth wasn't merely a repository, it was a vault that was now being opened. The second Titan continued rising until it hovered inches above the ocean, Golden wings extending, spirals rotating, plates phasing fully into our dimension. Low clouds swirled around its form, rain transformed into sparkling crystalline mist, reflecting its harmonic pulses. Then, together, both titans raised their limbs, slowly, reverently, toward the colossal being above, and the colossal being answered. Its limbs brightened, its core flared, its geometry shifted into its ceremonial configuration, a pattern so old it likely predated the galaxies themselves. Kaku stared with numb disbelief. "They're forming a triad," he murmured. "A planetary star triad, a stabilization array." The implications hit him a breath later. This is what you build when you're preparing to bring something else through. The slit behind the colossal being opened wider. The entities beyond moved into position, aligning themselves in a geometric arc that mirrored the positions of the titans and the colossal being. Space-time warped around their silhouettes, bending like fabric pulled tight at 100 points. A massive shadow moved behind the slit, larger than the colossal being, larger than the titans, larger than anything Webb had ever detected. Kaku blinked, breath trembling. "That's not a ship," he whispered. "That's not a structure. That's not even a being," he swallowed. "That's a world. A constructed world. A living world. A world waiting to cross." The triad aligned, the slit expanded, the shadow began to push through, and Earth, reactivated, awakened, reunited, was no longer a planet. It was an anchor, a receiver, a bridge, and something enormous was now trying to cross it. The shadow behind the slit thickened, pressing against the trembling veil of space-time like a deep ocean creature, pushing against the surface of a quiet lake. The colossal being's limbs tightened around Earth's magnetic lattice, stabilizing the triad with a gentle but unyielding hold. The two titans responded instantly, fractal wings folding into aerodynamic spirals, crystalline bodies aligning with perfect symmetry. The golden titan hovered over the Pacific like a silent sun, while the silver-blue titan suspended itself above the continents, its chin tilted toward the colossal being as though awaiting the next command in a ritual older than human memory. The shadow pressed harder, the slit widened, and the light behind it changed. It wasn't the glow of stars, it wasn't cosmic background radiation, it wasn't any frequency Webb had ever observed. It was organized, structured, alive. A shimmering membrane peeled forward, an iridescent surface stretching across kilometers, rippling with shifting constellations that weren't truly constellations but patterns, diagrams, blueprints of something vast and sentient. The membrane pushed against the slit and then slipped through, bending space-time outward in a long, slow exhale. Kaku whispered, "That's a boundary layer of a megastructure." The colossal being pulsed once, and the triad answered. Earth trembled, not violently, but with purpose. The mantle resonated, the subsurface nodes flared, the ocean stabilized into massive spirals, even the air harmonized, becoming denser, sharper, as though the planet was tuning every particle for a single unified task. Because now the crossing was underway. The membrane stretched across the sky like a living aurora, cascading in sheets of geometry that folded into spirals, then straightened into vast linear corridors, then blossomed into crystalline fractals. Kaku's voice broke. "That's not a wall, that's a surface, a planetary surface." A piece of the world behind the slit had entered our universe, and the triad tightened their formation. The colossal being commanded. The titans obeyed. The membrane glided forward. Beneath its shining expanse glimpses appeared. Not windows, not doors, but regions, ecosystems, landscapes of impossible symmetry and scale. A continent made of luminous stone veins, rings of floating archipelagos drifting like petals. Vast structures resembling cities formed not from metal, but from living geometry. A world built with the same fractal language as the Titans. Then the membrane shifted, revealing an interior core, a dark geometric heart spinning with gravitational harmonics so intense that even Webb's instruments faltered. The world was awakening. Earth responded, as though welcoming a long-lost sibling. The Titan above the Pacific arched its wings, golden spirals unfolding like sails catching a cosmic wind. The silver-blue Titan tilted its crystalline face upward, limbs extending toward the membrane. The colossal being pulsed again, and Earth pulsed back. The connection solidified. The world behind the slit began pushing through, slowly, deliberately, its gravitational footprint merging with Earth's field, synchronizing with tectonic rhythms, harmonizing with mantle oscillations. Kaku wiped his eyes without realizing it. They're merging planetary systems. The slit expanded further. A massive crystalline ridge pushed through, a mountain from that other world, breaching into ours like a slow, gentle emergence of a celestial cathedral. No shockwave followed, no air displacement, no destruction. It phased into our universe the same way the Titans phased through the mantle, as if entering the waking world after an eternal dream. Earth's crust vibrated in answer. The shoreline of continents shifted by millimeters. Deep ocean trenches trembled like strings on a cosmic instrument. The Titans raised their arms higher, spirals rotating in perfect mirrored motion. Kaku clutched his chest. They're not bringing the world into ours, he breathed. They're reactivating the network that once connected them. Then everything paused. The colossal being froze mid-pulse. The Titans locked in place. Even the membrane stilled, holding its immense body in a silent suspension. A final decision was being made. A choice so vast and ancient it echoed through every atom in the solar system. Then the colossal being bent its massive head toward Earth. A low, resonant tone, impossibly deep, impossibly gentle, reverberated through space, through stone, through everything. It wasn't threatening, it wasn't claiming, it was acknowledging, recognizing, welcoming. The planet beneath your feet answered. Earth pulsed once, bright, strong, certain, and the world behind the slit responded with a brilliance that outshone every star in Webb's view. The slit widened to its full span. The membrane unfurled. A colossal, luminous world, dormant for an age beyond comprehension, stepped halfway into our universe, tethered through the triad, connected by the Titans, anchored through Earth. Kaku whispered the final truth. This was never invasion, never surveillance, never threat. His voice trembled with awe. This was reunion. The colossal being raised its limbs, the Titans folded their wings, the emerging world pulsed in harmony, and Earth, silent, ancient, patient, completed the circuit. A forgotten cosmic network reactivated at last across the void of time. The universe shifted, and humanity, unaware of the enormity unfolding above, took its next quiet breath on a world that was no longer alone.